Ethan Caldwell checked his watch again as he rushed through the glass doors of his company building. The board meeting had run late, and now he was behind schedule. His driver waited with the car door open. "Right to the diner on 5th Street, please," Ethan said, sliding into the leather seat. 6 weeks ago, his life had been perfectly organized. He ran Caldwell Technologies with precision and success. His penthouse apartment stayed spotless. His calendar was managed down to the minute. Then came the call about his sister Kate's car accident. Now Ethan was temporary guardian to 5-year-old Lily, a quiet child with sad eyes who barely spoke. He knew nothing about children. The solution had been Grace Bennett, the nanny he hired after 3 failed attempts with other child care providers. Grace was different. She was warm but professional, firm but kind. Most importantly, Lily responded to her. The little girl had started talking again, even laughing sometimes. The car slowed as they approached the small diner where Grace worked evenings. Ethan frowned at the flickering neon sign. Still couldn't believe someone as capable as Grace needed 3 jobs to make ends meet. "Wait here," he told his driver. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee and pie. A few late customers sat in booths. Ethan spotted Grace behind the counter, her honey-brown hair pulled back, wearing a simple uniform. She looked tired but was smiling as she poured coffee for an elderly man. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, noticing him.
"Oh."
"You're right on time. Please, I've asked you to call me Ethan," he reminded her. As Grace grabbed her coat, the elderly man spoke up. "Your nanny is something special. Did you know she's been helping my wife read to me since my eyes went bad?" Ethan hadn't known. He watched Grace blush. "It's nothing, really," she said. On the drive home, Ethan noticed Grace staring out the window, lost in thought. "Lily asleep?" she asked. "Mrs. Parker said she waited as long as she could." Grace smiled. "She wanted to show you her drawing." "I'll see it tomorrow," Ethan said, feeling that familiar pang of guilt. When they arrived home, Grace thanked him for the ride and headed to her small room off the kitchen. Ethan stood in the hallway, then quietly walked to Lily's room. On her nightstand sat a crayon drawing of 3 figures holding hands. A tall man in a suit, a little girl, and a woman with a sunny smile. Ethan touched the paper gently, something shifting in his chest. The next evening, Ethan found himself running late again. A potential investor had kept him talking long after their scheduled meeting time. He texted his driver to pick up Grace without him, but the response came back quickly: car trouble. Ethan sighed and called a taxi. He would have to get Grace himself. As the taxi approached the diner, he noticed more cars than usual parked outside. Strange for a Tuesday night. When he stepped inside, he understood why. The usual clatter of dishes and murmured conversations had been replaced by something else. Music filled the small space, piano music, beautiful and moving. Ethan stood frozen by the door. Grace sat at an old upright piano in the corner, her fingers dancing across the keys. Her eyes were closed, her expression peaceful, yet somehow intense. Everyone in the diner watched her, food forgotten. She played the final notes and the room burst into applause. Grace opened her eyes, looking surprised to see her audience. She smiled shyly and stood up. "Same time next week, Grace?" called the diner owner. "If you'll have me, Joe," she answered. When she spotted Ethan, her smile faltered. "Mr. Caldwell, I mean Ethan, I didn't see you there. I had no idea you could play like that," he said as they walked to the waiting taxi. Grace looked down at her hands. "I studied music in college, piano performance. Why didn't you continue?" "My mom got sick. Cancer. I came home to help, and then the medical bills started piling up." She shrugged. "Life happens." Ethan felt something unfamiliar, tightness in his throat. "Does Lily know you play? She's heard me humming tunes. She asks about music sometimes." The taxi pulled up to his building. As they rode the elevator up to his penthouse, Ethan found himself watching Grace. How many other talents was she hiding? Mrs. Parker, the evening sitter, met them at the door. "She's still awake," she whispered. "Wouldn't go to sleep until she saw you both." In her bedroom, Lily sat up in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her face brightened when she saw them. "Grace, Uncle Ethan, you're both here." Ethan realized with a start that this was the most excited he'd ever seen his niece. "Story, please?" Lily asked. "It's late, sweetie," Grace said. "Just one," Ethan found himself saying. "I'll stay too," Grace looked at him with surprise. Ethan never participated in bedtime. As Grace began the story, Ethan watched them together. Something was changing inside him, something he couldn't yet name. A week later, Grace arrived at the penthouse to find a delivery truck outside. Two men were carefully unloading a beautiful grand piano. "Where would you like it, Mr. Caldwell?" one of the men asked Ethan, who stood supervising in the lobby. "The sunroom, please," Ethan replied. He turned and noticed Grace staring. "Good morning," he said casually. "I thought Lily might benefit from music lessons." Grace raised an eyebrow. "Does Lily know she's getting music lessons?" Ethan looked slightly embarrassed. "I thought you might teach her, if you want to, of course." Later that afternoon, Grace sat with Lily at the piano. The little girl pressed the keys gently, her eyes wide with wonder at each sound. "Like this?" Lily asked, copying Grace's finger position. "Perfect," Grace said. "You're a natural." From his office doorway, Ethan watched them. He had planned to work through some contracts, but found himself drawn to the music. Without thinking, he walked over and sat in an armchair near the piano. "Uncle Ethan, listen to me play." Lily demonstrated the simple melody Grace had taught her. "That's wonderful," Ethan said, his voice warm. "Maybe Grace will play something for us too." Grace hesitated, then began to play. The music filled the apartment, sunlight streaming through the windows onto her hands. Ethan watched, transfixed. When she finished, he realized Lily had climbed into his lap. "Again, please," the little girl whispered. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan found Grace in the kitchen making tea. "Thank you," he said, "for the music." "She's a special child," Grace replied. "She just needed someone to see her. Like you saw me at the diner," Ethan said quietly. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or something more. The next day, Ethan came home early from work. His assistant looked shocked when he announced he was leaving at 4. "Family matters," he explained, surprising himself with the words. He arrived home to find Grace and Lily baking cookies. Flour dusted the counter, and both of them had smudges on their faces. "Uncle Ethan, you're home." Lily ran to him, leaving tiny flour footprints on the floor. Without thinking, Ethan picked her up, not caring about his expensive suit. "We're making chocolate chip," Grace explained, looking surprised but pleased to see him. "Can I help?" Ethan asked. Grace handed him an apron. Their fingers touched, and Ethan felt a jolt of something he hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. "We're a good team," Lily declared, looking at them both. Ethan caught Grace's eye over Lily's head. "Yes," he said softly. "I think we are." 2 weeks later, Grace sat in a hospital waiting room, clutching her mother's hand. The doctor had just delivered surprising news. "The new treatment is working," her mother said, still looking shocked. "How did we get approved for this program? Cost thousands." Grace shook her head. "I don't know. They just called and said you qualified." That evening, Grace arrived at the penthouse deep in thought. She found Ethan in the kitchen making dinner, something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. "You're cooking?" she asked. "Trying to," he admitted. Lily wanted spaghetti. Grace smiled and washed her hands to help. As they worked side by side, she noticed a folder on the counter with her mother's name on it. Her heart stopped. She opened it while Ethan's back was turned. Inside were medical forms, payment authorizations, and a letter from the hospital's experimental treatment program. It's all signed by Ethan Caldwell. "You paid for my mother's treatment," she said quietly. Ethan turned, his face going pale. "Grace, I can explain. Why would you do that without telling me?" "I wanted to help. I didn't think you'd accept if I offered directly." Grace stepped back, suddenly seeing everything differently. The piano, the kindness, the way he looked at her. "Is that what this has been about? You felt sorry for me?" "No, Grace, I'm not a charity case, Ethan." Her voice shook. "I can't work here anymore." The next morning, Grace left her resignation letter on the kitchen counter. She packed quickly, her heart breaking at the thought of leaving Lily, but she couldn't stay. Not feeling like this, confused, hurt, and worst of all, foolish for thinking there had been something real growing between them. Ethan found the letter when he came out for coffee. He read it twice, then sank into a chair, his head in his hands. When Lily woke up and learned Grace was gone, she refused to speak. She pushed away her breakfast and sat silently, clutching the stuffed rabbit Grace had fixed for her. 3 nannies came and went in the next week. None could connect with Lily. Ethan's sister Kate called from her rehabilitation center. "What's going on?" she asked. "Lily barely spoke when I called." "I made a mistake," Ethan admitted. "A big one. With Grace." "How did you know?" Kate sighed. "Because you sound like your heart is broken. And because Lily loved her, I was trying to help. Did you ever think maybe Grace didn't need your help? Maybe she just needed you?" Ethan stared out the window at the city below. For all his business success, he had failed at the most important thing. "I have to find her," he said. Ethan stood outside the small music venue, checking the flyer in his hand. Friday night showcase featuring Grace Bennett. Joe from the diner had given him the information after much persuasion. Inside, the room was dimly lit and packed with people. Ethan found a spot near the back wall, just as Grace walked onto the small stage. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. When she sat at the piano, the room went quiet. The music she played was different from what he'd heard before, something original, filled with emotion. Ethan felt every note like a word spoken directly to him. When she finished, the audience erupted in applause. After her performance, Ethan waited by the side door. When Grace emerged, she froze at the sight of him. She asked, "I needed to see you," Ethan said. Grace looked away. "There's nothing to explain. Please, just 5 minutes." They walked to a nearby park bench. The night air was cool, stars visible above the city lights. "Lily misses you," Ethan began. "She won't talk to anyone else." "I miss her too," Grace admitted, her voice soft. "I was wrong," Ethan continued. "About your mother's treatment. About everything. I thought I was helping, but I was controlling. It's what I do, fix problems with money. I'm not a problem to be fixed. I know that now." Ethan took a deep breath. "The truth is, you changed things for me. Before you came, my life was just work. Then you showed me what really matters." Grace looked at him, her expression guarded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I fell in love with you, not because you needed help, but because you helped me. You showed me how to be part of a family again." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "I was hurt because I thought what we had wasn't real. It's the most real thing in my life," Ethan said. "You and Lily." "I can't give up my music again," Grace said. "I've started teaching piano at the community center." "I would never ask you to." Ethan reached for her hand. "Come back, not as our nanny, but as yourself. Teach, play music, follow your dreams. Just be part of our lives again." Grace looked down at their joined hands. "And what about us?" "That's up to you, but I hope we can find out together." A small smile formed on Grace's lips. "Lily really misses me. She made me promise to bring you home." The next morning, Ethan and Grace walked into the penthouse together. Lily was sitting at the piano, pressing keys randomly. When she saw Grace, she ran across the room and threw herself into her arms. "You came back," she cried. "Did," Grace said, holding her tight. Over Lily's head, Grace's eyes met Ethan's. The look they shared held a promise of music, of family, of a future together that none of them had expected but all of them needed. "We're a good team," Ethan said, echoing Lily's words from weeks before. This time, Grace didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, "we are."